There was a very touching lunch last week that Judith Chalmers and the Lady Taverners gave in tribute to me, and I had a few friends along to say a few words. Rob Brydon, Harry Hill, Jimmy Tarbuck, Danny LaRue, Stephen Fry from America sent a big message. But the point I was sort of making is that the friends I have cover generations as well, because there's no division for me in my life between my contemporaries and people who, are very hot today, because I'm interested in them all and I go and see them all. So I don't know how I've lasted so long, to be truthful. I don't do as much now, but as you say, you see the catalogue of work that. Well, certainly the catalogue of work that Ronnie Barker did, even more than me. When you see Open Orals going out now at BBC One at evening hours and Porridge. Sorry, I can't get them to repeat. Sorry, I don't know why I keep saying that. Somebody will hear it one day. But I mean, the two Ronnies and the sketchbooks, everything. There's so much material, and it's been going on for so many years that people are still excited by it, because I think the quality of the writing made it last. There's still things you can say, you can read again and think, my God, that was clever, and I think that has helped, really.
Other than really funny, how would you describe your type of comedy?
I don't know, really. I mean, certainly very, very word-based, probably, rather than physical. The funny thing about comics, in a way, is, when I speak of myself, that I started off being quite funny naturally in myself, do you know what I mean? And then as the years go by, you, rather like a French polisher, you put on veneers with skills, with voices, with sophisticated writing, or a bit more this and that, and you have to be careful that you don't cover up what you really started with, with technique and voices, and you think, wait a minute, was I ever really funny in the first place? And you look at Peter Kay and you think, my God, he is really funny. He is funny from the word go. He is actually funny from the word go. And of course, also, I think that comics have gone through a change. I mean, when we all started, I say that, my wife and everything, and worked with Trinder and worked with Max Wall and worked with the Crazy Gang, they were nearly comics all the time. If you had lunch with Trinder, it'd be Trinder that was on the night before, or a bit like Motabi can be like that, very, very. Whereas the generation that followed, like John Cleese and Michael Palin and Eric Idle, are not really funny as themselves. They are just normal folk, and then they go into a funny mode. So it changes a lot, really.
Do you think those people are more actors than comedians?
They're probably actors with a funny angle on things when it comes to writing down. But you mentioned the wonderful Ken Dodd there. Now, Ken is not funny all the time. He's a very serious student of the art of comedy, isn't he? I mean, going back to the Greek and everything, I mean, he's almost professorial standards. Quite a big word. But I mean, he's really studied the whole thing. I mean, it is amazing, really. Yes, it's just quite amazing, really. Has Ken tried to change, or has he always been there on his own with his tickling stick and a hat or a big drum? He never wanted to do sketches or anything, or I don't think he did, no.
No, it was just that. He just wanted to stand on stage and tell jokes, as far as I understand.
But I was saying to you before we started talking about this that I did read the interesting piece about him, because, of course, the business has undergone a little bit of a change. There is this new thing called stand-up, which is terrific and very exciting in a lot of people's hands, but it's quite different from what Ken did or what I do, or in as much as these chaps arrive in the T-shirt and the leather jacket, and you see them having a half pint of lager before you go into the theatre. Then they come on and think, oh my God, that was him. He was standing next to me in the bar a minute ago. And he entertains you for an hour and a quarter, and he goes off and he's back in the bar afterwards, and there he is again. In our world, we're in a little dressing room getting ready, and we pee like out of a cracker,
They don't really tell jokes either, do they now?
No, they don't. No, they do. I mean, they have a fantastically original way of rambling round and being very funny, and quite, of course, quite rude and saying things, talking about subjects that we wouldn't talk about, sort of rude, but not deeply offensive, just little islands of extreme rudeness, and then, but very good with words and very good with, very entertaining, really.
It seems to me now that of all the comedians that are left, Ken Dodd's probably our greatest stand-up comedian. We've lost so many, probably in even the last 10 years, with Les Dawson and people like that. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. And he's been the greatest for ever, really, since... yes, he has been, a great legend. I've met him about 3 or 4 times and spoken on the telephone recently too, funnily enough. And I don't know how he exactly works, but I do know that when he did the shows at the BBC, he used to. He always rolled up all the. In those days, autocue was all on rolled paper. All his jokes were all rolled up, put in the case, and props were put in another case, and he had them, and he in the car and away somewhere, But I know he's an avid collector of things to say, and he used to write things all over his hand. I don't know if he does, and slipping in new bits. He must have a fantastic memory, really. Of course, great memory.
And he writes long notes about every show he does. Did you ever do that?
No, I never did that. And, what sort of things might he write?
I've never seen them, but from what I understand, he can tell you what happened in Glasgow in 1997. He can tell you exactly how a joke went, and the jokes that went well and the jokes that went badly. It's that detailed.
God. Is he changing all the time? Is it like a snake skin? A bit goes off the front and a new bit comes on at the back? Is that sort of thing? Or
very slowly now, because, of course, when you've got 5 hours of material, you can't replace it all.
I know. And of course, in it, he does wrap up some real old jokes as well. I don't mean jokes, but gags. Oh my God, I'm surprised he's still doing that one, wrapped up in the new ones, But still, no, lovely, wonderful.
I think his mantra is if it gets a laugh, it goes in.
That's right. Not worried about people saying, oh my God, that's a creaky one, Yeah.
I loved your DVD from a couple of years ago, which was so entertaining. And again, your way in which you deliver is gentler than Ken Dodd. You don't of bang it at the end as he does.
No, I've always been, I'm afraid, a bit like that, a little bit on the gentle side.
Do you have a plan to do another tour? Because, people love seeing you live and you're good at it.
Well, I am, quite enjoy it. An hour is enough for me to do, and I've got probably a bit of a complex about getting enough new stuff, because I know one of the glorious virtues of the new generation, like Harry Hill, or, I don't mean he's that new, but I mean young compared to me, and even Divine, Victoria Wood. Have a new hour each year they go out. How do they find it, And I thought, I couldn't go out again and do the same stuff. I'd be frightening people. I said, people won't remember, and the same people won't come to see you either, but I hang on to stuff and don't change it as much, because it's very difficult to find, of course. I have, and as you have new material, of course, or you do new material, you don't do it with the same vigor and attack as you do the old stuff, because you're not so sure of it. It's a bit like with the dog growling at you, they do everything. Oh, I'll do this gently until you need confidence, really.
Do you still enjoy doing the live stuff?
Yes, I do. I really quite like doing corporates. That's about I enjoy a half hour or 35 minutes. When it gets over an hour, I get bored with myself. Never mind.
Were you a funny child?
I would think probably quaint rather than funny. I don't know. I wasn't. Although I'm short, I never had to use comedy as a defense mechanism at school, because I wasn't bullied or anything. So there must have been a sort of air about me, or an aura about me, that protected me from possible bullying. People must have thought, well, he's got enough to say for himself, and I think he can stand his own ground too. But I don't remember being funny. But I was, of course, when I first performed in the church youth club at the age of 15, now 16, I was obviously funny. And that was the turning point of my life, because I realised I hadn't known what to do, and then I suddenly found this facility, which was rare, because I hadn't found in any part of my life a facility that I found at that time on the stage, a comfort zone I was in, and I thought, this is a little message, a little sign I'm getting here. And I grabbed hold of it and followed it relentlessly from then onwards, really. So that was a blessing.
Once you've had a laugh on stage, can you ever go back and be a serious actor, do you think?
Well, it's very, very, what is the word I'm looking for? It's very, very addictive, yes. Yes, you would have a job playing a straight role. You will always be looking for a little gap where you can get a laugh, really. So it is, yes, a very addictive thing to be able to do, really.
Professionally speaking, when was the turning point? Was it when you did the Frost program and you met Ronnie Barker?
Yes, the Frost report, definitely. Yes, David Frost changed my life, really. I thought my life was going to change before that, because one afternoon I had this phone call from Joan Littlewood, of all people, saying, I'm doing a musical which has been written by Lionel Bart. It's going to be designed by Oliver Messel. It's going to be choreographed by Paddy Stone, and it's about Robin Hood, and I'd love you to be in it, playing Will Scarlett. And I thought, well, my goodness me, that is a turnaround. And of course it was really turned out to be one of the biggest disasters of all time, called Twang. And but just round the corner from that offer, David Frost rang me up and said, I'm about to do a show called The Frost Report. Now I have to tell you, if Twang runs, you won't be able to do it, but if it comes off like it looks it might. And Twang came off and I did The Frost Report, and from that moment on, my life changed. So David Frost really was the major turning point, yeah.
That program really did create so many careers, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Well, David, really I don't think David gets enough of the credit for the number of people he sort of found or fostered, because he was quite a brave entrepreneur, David. He was the first of performers who started their own production companies, and he encouraged and promoted John Cleese and all Python Boys and Marty Feldman and, as I say, all Python, who all wrote and performed and wrote a lot of the Frost Report material and a lot of the material we did subsequently. And so a clutch of about 12 people David used to sort of sponsor, right? He realized the importance of good writing. So
how do you know in your career when you're on the right path and you've actually got some talent and you might make it? How do you know that you're not just following a dream, like you see so many of these kids on X Factor who really can't sing?
Yes. Well, of course, the thing about Ron and I is, as Danny said the other day at the lunch down in the room, that we, and he certainly, well, like Ken Dover talking about theatrical people, we were theatre trained in the theatre with all the skills of being heard and standing still when you're supposed to stand still and not sitting down, and the costumes and all the rules, you're being in half an hour before and 35 minutes in fact, because the half an hour is peculiarly not a half hour, it's actually 35 minutes, and all these little rules that you lived by because you were theatre trained. And so we weren't Tupney Haley who sang in a pub and then went on these ephemeral celebrity careers. They're just so different, you see.
The whole business has changed since your day, hasn't it, in a way? You would never have dreamed of going to the BBC and saying, I haven't got any talent, I don't have an act, I don't have a show, but will you give me a job? People really do that now, don't they?
I know, they don't. They go along and are bravely auditioned, and they don't seem to realise that half the time, too, the sadness is that half the time the acts that you see who are most tragically pathetic are being used for that reason. They're not really showing always the best of the crop. They're showing a few of the best and then one terrible person to be laughed at, really, which is really not fair. You know what I mean? It's their selection that they're showing you. So, but it is a day of instant celebrity, as you say, people who do nothing and have no skill being quite well known, really. Not for long, though. It doesn't last very long.
Is that the key then to lasting, that you have to have a talent and you have to have something that you've worked hard to do and trained at and become good at?
Yes, you have to, that's right, and have a lot of variety, little corners to turn and little tricks to twist things round to make them look different so that they're a little bit refreshed every now and again, not treading the same furrow all your life.
What about your parents? How proud were they when you got on the Frost Report and you got these first professional gigs that led on to the greatness that you've achieved since?
Well, I'm pleased to say my mum and my dad were still alive, which is a terrific bonus. I mean, when I opened at the Palladium on my own, because of course the other thing about Ron and I, we did a lot of things separately and a lot together, but Ron was not interested in doing say a pantomime at the Palladium. To be honest, at that stage I don't think I was interested in playing the Ugly Sisters with Ron, because we didn't want to. We wanted to have half of our year separate and half of our year together. And then I played Buttons at the Palladium, and with Clodagh Rogers, Julian Orchard, Terry Scott, David Kossoff. A lot of them are gone now. Clodagh still with us and doing well. My mum and dad came to the first night, so they saw it. And that's always rather nice, isn't it, when you're done? And they saw the first decent house we bought and everything, so he knew I was all right before he went, I think, really.
And that must be a great thrill for you, knowing that he knew that.
Yes, that's right. It was lovely.
What about the Palladium? I mean, is there any greater thrill in terms of a place to perform?
No, I don't. I think the Palladium, of course, has a very special place in my life, and most performers' lives, I suppose, in vaudeville people, because when we were starting off, I mean, you could always show your card and get a free ticket for a matinee at the Palladium. In the terrific days when Val Parnell ran the Palladium and the American top of the bills came, the Hopes, the Bennies, the Danny Kays, the Martin Lewises, the Mickey Rooneys, the Jackie Gleasons, and one saw them all. And you see, even those days when Bob Hope came up and Benny, they had a variety show in the first half, and Danny Kaye as well, and the second half they would do an hour, but they'd have people from their company pop on. Phil Harris would come on and chat to Bob Hope, and they'd do little shticks, but nobody was on forever, I mean, in the best days of Variety, when Variety bills were touring the Moss Empires, the Max Millers and the Max Walls, that type of top of the bill, would only do 22 minutes. The first spot comic, 7 minutes, actually. And if you went to 9, there was a knock on your door saying, take these 2 minutes out. 7 minutes, you're paid for it, 7 minutes, what we want. Because they were doing twice nightly, and it had to run to time, you see. So Max Miller would do 22 minutes twice nightly, and that's not as bad as doing an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours Ken Dodd has done since, you know what I mean? But the Palladium was... When I saw, Bob Hope, who was, of course, this fantastic giant of a jokesmith and big film star, when I went to see him at the Palladium, and the music plays, dee, 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 and gone for dee, 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 dee. Still no Bob Hope. Da 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 dee 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 dee. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bob Hope. Dee dee, and the miles of music, the confidence he walked on with, and I thought, my God, it's just, is he real? It was because he'd been a huge film star, to me. They were great days, really. Wolf Phillips Band, Palladium, terrific.
Who have you worked with who's impressed you the most?
Let me see. Well, I met Bob Hope. That was fairly exciting. David Frost was going to interview Bob Hope in the period when he was doing Frost on Friday, Frost on Saturday, Frost on Sunday. And I rang up David and I said, I'd like to be in the audience when you interview Bob Hope. And, I'll get a ticket for him. And it was done at Wembley. And I was walking along the corridor. I'd come out of the gents, actually, in the corridor at Wembley. I walked along the corridor. Who can come out the room in front of me? Bob Hope. He said, my God, your name is... He said, I watched you last night on the television doing a cute little bit. This was No That's Me over here with Bing, he said, in Tom Jones' dressing room. I thought, that's not a bad trio to be watching. And he said, how old are you? I said, I'm 27 or 20. Well, very good, Ronnie, nice to meet you. And then I went and sat in the audience, and he did all Mickey Rooney jokes about Ronnie Corbett. because he'd seen a little gap talking about a short comic. And that was pretty impressive. Who have I worked with? And then he introduced me subsequently at a charity thing in Grosvenor House. I met Crosby as well, and Dalmahoy in Edinburgh when he turned up for a golf tournament. Who would be they're pretty impressive. Can't help but being impressed by these sort of presences, you know.
The Alex Belfield In Conversation podcast.
My special guest today is the author of a brand new book called It's Good Night from Him, and the book is the story of the two Ronnies. Ronnie Corbett joins us today for an exclusive hour-long programme. We were talking before about your time at the Palladium and the people you get to meet. Presumably that is one of the big bonuses of being in show business, that you get to meet your heroes.
Yes, and of course Hope had been a hero like Danny Kaye, but Hope I had watched throughout my childhood, and I mean not only a jokesmith but an attractive, charming persona he exuded, and a lovely dancer. He sang beautifully, you know, in the way that Fred Astaire and Torme, these sort of people using a song, and Hope would sing. And when I've got on tape on DVD at home, I watch it maybe within a month ago, Jimmy Cagney and Bob Hope, Seven Little Boys, doing a tap dance on the table. Well, unbelievably good. I mean, Cagney was a fabulous tap dancer with the peculiar stiff-legged action he had. And I watched them and then I watch it over and over again. Hope is good, but not quite the little élan that Cagney has as a dancer. So they were great times.
I don't know whether you agree. It seems to me that Bob Monkhouse was Bob Hope's nearest comparison in terms of his class on stage and his material that he used.
Yes, and Bob was a great wordsmith. I mean, fantastic. Yes, he was really, with Doddy about new material and learning and of course he was a very clever writer as well. He could write a lot of his own, which is a very brave thing to do. I mean, it's hard enough to pick, if somebody sends you 4 pages, to pick the best 10 jokes from 4 pages. It's hard enough to back your judgment without having to write the stuff and back your own judgment. That is really hard, you know. But Bob Monkhouse was a very accomplished, very, very accomplished. And what a amount of work he did, that's right.
I was a huge fan, but the one thing that they said about Bob after he died was that he wasn't loved in the same way that probably you are or Doddy is, because he almost was too slick.
Yes, he was. It was an unfair criticism, but it was certainly levelled at him. There was something people thought chilling about him. I think it was... He probably let the expertise show a little too much. He couldn't help... he wasn't showing off, but the great thing is to be expert and then just slightly cover it up a bit, you know, or I mean, it is odd, but Bob Hope was... I mean, Bob Hope had quite... I mean, he went through a funny period over here. I remember when he did Miss World at the Albert Hall and people threw flour at him because of his America and Vietnam and that time of his life. And he was a tough customer. I mean, there's no doubt about that within himself, but he was very, very good at covering. No, Bob it was always a bit unfair about Bob because he was a very sweet man personally and everything, but I think he felt he had been unfairly tarred by that brush as well.
Nobody likes a very attractive comedian, do they?
No, or of course when we were growing up, nobody liked young comedians. I mean, I had this peculiar... that I must have sat and planned my life. I sort of did plan my life in a way. Sometimes I think I'm living the dream I planned, but I did see in my mind that if nothing had happened to me by the age of 37, peculiar age to think of, but I thought 37, I would go and do something else in the business, because in our day, anybody under 37 was in the 30s quite easily seen to be cocky, you know, and you're too young to start telling me jokes or being flash in front of me, you know. It was an unattractive thing. But in those days, of course, the young comics were appealing to family audiences, so it was easy to be cocky in front of granddads and mums and uncles. Nowadays, the young comics appear in front of young people, so they can be as cocky as they like because they're all the same age, you know what I mean? You go and see Ross Noble's audience, they're all, you know, or Ed Byrne, they're all a young audience. You don't see many uncles and aunts in there and things so much as you would see at Doddy's.
Today's comedians, I mean, you mentioned Ed Byrne and people like that. Do you think they'll be around in 50 years' time?
There's no way of knowing. I mean, Ed Byrne was very sweet. Because my grandson, Tom, absolutely is a stand-up nut. He has seen everybody, he has read everybody, he is, right from Bill Hicks, right, I mean, he's a real knowledgeable thing about comedy. He sees everything, you know. Last Saturday he was up seeing us, he slipped off to Croydon to see the Borat film, you know, so he's really, you know, far too fast for me, I'm afraid. And last year, because we got a house in East Lothian, so I go a lot to the festival, and he booked about 10 pairs of tickets because he was going to be joined by a school friend who sadly let him down. So I went to 3 of them with him, and I went to see Ed Byrne. And it is a funny procedure for me because the festival is very exciting, but it's very difficult for a well-known face, a well-kent face, to get into the theatre with the crowds and the rushing, the queuing and everything like that. So I have to make a prior arrangement to get what is called walked in, which is lovely, because the moment the act in front finishes, I'm walked into an empty theatre. So Tom and I were walked into this empty theatre and sat there chatting with each other, and the two, I'm not going to remember their names now, the boys who went before Ed Byrne were 2 brothers who do a sort of Cirque du Soleil act called the Career Brother, something anyway, and Tom had seen them, so he said, that's them tidying up their act, that's them over, that's that one sweeping up, he's one of the brothers. Then this boy walks across the stage, his hair in a pigtail and a black corduroy jacket, drinking a plastic jug of beer, and Tom said to me, that's Ed Byrne. I said, really? Ed Byrne checking up a few things, still sipping his beer before the show, this is, and then he came back again. He said, that's Ed Byrne. Then Ed Byrne talked to the little lady who'd walked us in, and I could see him saying, is that my imagination? Or is that Ronnie Corbett? She said, that is Ronnie Corbett. So he came up and played and said, well, it's very nice of you to come and introduce Tom and then. And he did his act, and it was wonderful, terrific. And at the end, he walked off, and he came back and took his call. He said, I have to say, I was a bit nervous tonight, and I hope it's all right, because one of my heroes was in. Well, I mean, that really makes me tears running down my cheeks. They're nearly doing now. As I remember it, lifted his hand to me and walked off. And of course, Tom thought, God, that's wonderful. So, I mean, you know, that is moving, really, when somebody contemporary like that, as clever as that, acknowledges the amount of work one's done. One has done a lot of work, of course, I forget that. God knows how many 2 Ronnies we did, and when we did the sketchbook last year, the Christmas show got huge figures, you know. We're
back with our remaining moments with Ronnie Corbett, and we've got to talk about the 2 Ronnies. The new book's in the stores now, and it is tremendous. It's a great insight into your life together, because I have to say you are one of my favourite comedians, as I told you earlier, and your skits together are just fabulous. And I'll tell you my favourite 2.
Yes.
The one where you're on the phone.
Oh, yes.
You're reading out the shopping list.
Yes. No.
How do you manage to do that, to listen to him but not make it look as if you're listening to him?
I know. Well, that's part of our job, I suppose. Written by David Renwick, that was. I always never know whether to say David Renwick, because that's a Scottish way of saying it, but I think David said Renwick, who wrote quite a lot of my chair spots as well. Yes, that is very good. Curious enough, I did it. It is very televisual. I did it in a Royal Command once with another actor. Ronnie didn't want to do it, or wasn't in the command with an actor. And we really struggled with it in the theatre because it was too small for a big house, you know. But it is a good sketch. Yes, I'm glad you enjoyed that. What was the other one you were going to mention?
The other one is where you're dressed as women with the pots and pans singing the song.
Oh gosh, oh yes, right, yes. And of course we had to test various pans and various things to get the right sound, the right key, yes.
The one thing that struck me about that was you've got a live orchestra behind you, so not only had you got to worry about what you were singing, what you were playing, but you've got to worry that you were in time with the orchestra behind you as well.
Yes, and remember the words, of course. Although we read a lot of that stuff. You see, we used to do that the Saturday night before. We were very skillful, if I may say so, at reading stuff. Otherwise you couldn't have done it weekly. My chair spot, was all down on autocue, all worked out properly, and I kind of knew it. I was familiar with it. I wasn't staring at it like a startled rabbit. I could take my eyes off and play about with bits, but basically the text was there, so I didn't have to worry about it, and that was a great bonus to Ron, and all his monologues were all done on the same way on autocue.
For anybody who's listening to this now who wants to be a comedian or get into the kind of thing that you did with the two Ronnies, what is the greatest skill? Is it your memory or your ability to keep up with what's happening around you? Because that's what you see with a lot of people now, that they're not quite up to the material they're delivering.
No, you have to be certainly extremely comfortable with what you're saying, and that takes a few weeks with a new bit of material, and then you get to a stage where you have little chunks that you may or may not go to, and then you sort of start to mess about. When I really mess about, or really lost my way, or really wondering, I'll pick up something and I'll do a bit about what I've picked up. So, and that's what people, of course, even though I'm lost and panicking, they laugh at it because they don't believe I really am. I think I'm putting on the panic, but it's actually there.
Ronnie was such an interesting character and such a humble man. Whenever I saw him interviewed, which wasn't very often because he didn't do any, he didn't like taking any kind of praise whatsoever, and it was as if the genius came to him by accident and he didn't want to talk about it.
No, that's right. I think probably he felt that by talking about it, it would elude him, it would escape from him. And also it's very difficult to define what other people see in you as being funny. To start talking about yourself in that kind of rather, self-possessed way is in itself kind of unattractive. To try to define what you do, say, what do you, if people say, what do you think people like about you? Say, well, I think people adore me because I'm tiny and I've got brown twinkling eyes. So you have to, and Ron certainly, of course, he didn't like being intrusive because he didn't really know who he was as himself, as I say in the book. He couldn't even, his local garden fete, he couldn't open in the summer. He's all right if you say, will you come along as, with a moustache on and a big trilby and come along as the local squire. He could do that, for 8 or 10 minutes and open the fete in that way. But unless he was a character, he didn't feel he was anybody, which is wrong, of course, but that's what he felt.
Where do you think that came from, that lack of wanting any publicity? He goes against everything that is about being a celebrity, isn't it? Most people are self-congratulating and look for the kind of approval and press. He
was naturally, reclusive, and as I say, he didn't know who to go out as. That was part of it, He was this actor, very funny character actor, and unless he had something to put round himself, he would sooner be, living quietly.
The other interesting thing was, it's a well-told story, but he would even send stuff in as a different person because he didn't want people to judge him on being Ronnie Barker. He wanted his material to speak for itself.
That's right, yes, the Gerald Wiley story. It sent excellent stuff in, and all of us wondered who this man was, and he said it was Peter Reed, who was Ronnie's agent. Ronnie said, I think this chap is one of Peter's clients who probably writes novels or plays building up this picture of this man, and he doesn't want to know who the author is. And we all said, I wonder who it is. And Tom Stoppard very sweetly said he was very pleased to be found in the list. He was one of the people who was being punted around, and Frank Muir was another one, and there was a huge list of possible people who were writing these sketches. And then on the Sunday when we were doing Frost on Sunday from Wembley in the afternoon, Ron came at the last show of the series. Ron came into my dressing room and said, I want to tell you at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He said, I want to tell you before anybody finds out tonight when it's going to be revealed, but I am Gerald Wiley. Gosh. much, my God. So we had this Chinese meal, and, there was a blank chair, and this Gerald Wiley was going to sit in it. And Ronnie stood up when the food came on the table, said, I have to tell everybody that I am Gerald Wiley. And Barry Cryer said, nobody likes a smart ass. That's how it all happened.
Do you think he secretly chuckled inside and was having a bit of a laugh at everybody else?
Yes, he was, yes, because he tempted me to make an offer for one of the sketches, that he'd written, and my agent rang up Peter Reed and said, he wants £3,000 for it. Ronnie said, that's far too much, and he got me at it. Offer them $1,000. Then the message came back, said, Gerald Wiley's offered you the rights of the sketch in perpetuity because of the way you've done them, so he gave it to me anyway.
It's all a fun game, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
What was he like as a friend?
Well, he was a very, very dear, sweet, darling friend, really, and really quite, what would I say, not rustic, but he was quite everyday, he was very, very, the everydayness, mind you, masked a very, very clever brain, but outside himself he felt everyday, but inside he was brilliant.
You must miss him very, very much.
Yes, I do. Of course I do, yes. We speak to Joy quite a bit. And of course my house is stuffed full of things, little bits of his handwriting or pictures or books or scripts.
And I suppose that's the greatest legacy of any comedian's life, that you'll be on TV in 30 years, 40 years' time from now.
Yes, well, yes, perhaps indeed, yeah. Very nice.
You do a lot of interesting things, like you did extras a few weeks ago with Ricky Gervais.
Yes.
I think this is a very smart move for you to make, because you're making yourself contemporary every time you do something like this, and it keeps you with this new generation, and it keeps people going back to the two Ronnies, and everybody's therefore remembering you as a current comedian, not as an old-fashioned comedian.
No, that's true. That's partly... Well, I respect them, of course, all, and of course the other thing is I see them very often before they have become well known through my Edinburgh Festival visits with the house in Edinburgh. I saw Harry Hill, and I saw Patrick Marber doing stand-up, and I see, Ed Byrne, as I say, last year. But going back, Rob Bride and League of Gentlemen, they all talk about whispering. I think here Ronnie Corbett's in the audience, and they all wait to hear the I laugh. And so I sort of... Not befriend them, but they know I respect them before they become well known, really. So, and then I got this message here: Ricky Gervais wants to speak to you. He wants to. I thought it's very nice. What is it? He said, I want you to do that. Well, I'm very flattered. He said, well, you don't know what I want you to do yet. And he told me what he wanted me to do, and there was some discussion in the family. My wife thought, should you be doing that? And the daughter said yes. So it was lovely to do it, actually. And it wasn't too graphic, but it was funny when I saw it, I must say. And I'm on Little Britain's Christmas show. I'm not telling you what I'm doing on that, with bubbles. So as you say, I try and keep myself in the picture.
I'm very blessed because I get to meet people like you who've been doing the job for a long, long time, and everybody I speak to speaks so highly of you, and they love you and admire you and adore you, and that's so rare in this business. And congratulations on everything you do, and thanks for being in our hearts, because the two Ronnies are just so loved, and it must be great to be a part of that.
Well, it is. Yeah, well, I've been very lucky, and thank you very much.
Your new autobiography is in the stores now, The Two Ronnies, and it's a great read and a brilliant insight into two people who we really know very little about, although we know so well. Ronnie Corbett, thank you for talking to me.
Thank you very much for coming.